My name is Zaid Schlah. Welcome to this year's Peace Life Essay Contest. This is the 31st annual contest, and I was honored to take part in this year's ceremony. I was first asked by David Tucker and Linda Lagasse and Indira Clark to take part in this as a screener, and I began as a screener, started to read some of the important essays that the young students were reading. And as a writer, it's really interesting to see the kinds of themes and ideas that we're working on, particularly those of the Peace Life Essay Contest. So as an English instructor and an instructor of critical thinking and engaging with civic issues, as a writer, this is also something that I felt strongly towards, so I'm really honored. I want to thank Linda, Indira, and David Tucker, and also I've met Lang Nu this evening, who is the board president of the Peace Life Center. One of the things that I thought was interesting in the transition between the Peace Life Essay Contest, issues like homelessness, issues like immigration, was the transition that it made to Modesto Junior College. It was almost a seamless transition. The mission statement at Modesto is to create thoughtful, culturally aware and engaged students. And so there was a real parallel, I think, between what we as a college and as a mission are trying to do and what the Peace Life Center is trying to do. Some of the issues that the Peace Life Center has been involved with, and historically it seems to be a traditional foundation. It began its inception in the 70s, and there's even a newspaper that is produced. I met one of the board members earlier today, and you can get a copy of the newspaper and some of the issues that they are genuinely talking about. If you think about the Vietnam War in the 70s, they were involved with activism and engagement. The PowerPoint also shows some of the historical ideas that they were discussing and involved with, such as nuclear weapons. They were actively involved in preventing some of the development of nuclear technology here in the San Joaquin Valley. There was a peace camp essay contest in Stanislaus in the 80s. So this began really in the 80s. This is about, I'm a millennial, so this is long before my time. But also in the 90s, they were involved with the Persian Gulf, Panama and Yugoslavia, US sanctions in Iraq, the Martin Luther King Jr. event in the 2000s. They were involved with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and Occupy Modesto. And so I really felt an affinity to some of these ideas that were being expressed here, and I think it's not just a writing contest that the Peace Life Essay Contest is about. It really is about transforming young writers into civic-minded engagement and working towards a better culture and society for us all. So I'd like to thank all the writers this evening for their contributions, whether you won or simply participated. Let's give everybody a hand. As I was reading through and screening some of these essays, I will say a little bit about the judging in case you're not aware. The judging is blind judging. It's screened independently. They reach out to college professors at Modesto and also some of the members, but they are nameless, and we read them. We pass on what we think are the top screened essays, and then again they are screened again for the finalists. So it's an impartial judging, and we try to select those that exemplify and develop the ideas as clearly as possibly, but also with a sense of passion and emotion. And I think there were a lot of essays that did that this year, particularly a lot of the imagery dealing with the issues of immigration and some of the things that immigrants are dealing with. I was really proud of the students for developing this sense of empathy and thinking outside of themselves and thinking for a moment, just in time, what it might be like to come to a new land and a new country and some of the pressures that go with it. I will say something now about the participants. We had 549 participants. We have 32 schools, 51 teachers, and 15 school winners. A school winner is a school that had 10 or more essays that were submitted in any division. So we had some school winners as well. There were 20 winners and finalists in Division 1, 3, and 4, and there were 15 finalists in Division 2. So again, I'd just like to honor all participants. All the participants today will be receiving a certificate of participation. Typically, the ceremony takes about an hour, and it runs pretty quickly. The first thing that we will do is recognize the finalists by division. So we'll begin with Division 4, and then we'll move all the way up till Division 1. We will listen to the award essayist and give all the finalists a chance to be seen up front. What you will receive in this packet, there will be a letter of recognition from elected officials, a coupon for this year's Peace Essay Contest t-shirt, which is available at the back. And then finally, last but not least, there are winners and finalists have checks in them. So as soon as you get your check, cash it. Okay, without further ado, let me just very quickly run over. We'll have Division 4 go first. That will be grades 5 and 6. You'll come up to the stage to present. It was really compelling for me and emotional for me to look at some of the stories that these young writers were producing. I still recall some of the images. I remember some of the stories were of a Syrian family. The student had imagined a Syrian family and the struggles that they had taken to coming here, leaving their friends, their family, their language, and basically starting from fresh. So for a young student, grades 4 and 5, to be able to do that, whether they won or not, I think that is deserving of a win in itself for them and for the school district also.
All right, first we have Jared Warder he's a school winner and finalist from Agnes Baptist Elementary, and his teacher is Michelle Danner. Maddie Turner is a finalist from Heart Ransom Academic Charter. Her teacher is Susan Janis. Congratulations. Next, we have Ari Silo, school winner and finalist from John Fremont Elementary. His teacher is Doreen Arnold. Congratulations. We can't help it, I know. Jacob Miller is a finalist from Agnes Baptist Elementary. His teacher is Tony David. Congratulations. David McCann, school winner and finalist from Daniel Savage Middle School. Teacher Carrie Cavanis. Congratulations. Natalia Martinez, finalist from Agnes Baptist Elementary. Teacher Michelle Danner. All right. Lorraine Mansell, finalist from Heart Ransom Academic Charter. Teacher Susan Janis. Congratulations. Allie Hugh, finalist from Agnes Baptist Elementary. Teacher Tony David. Congratulations. Jordan Henry, finalist from Sonoma Elementary. Teacher Gina Gergich. Congratulations. Usef Ahmed, finalist from Hickman Charter School. Teacher David Meyer. Marcella Coleman, honorable mention from Heart Ransom Academic Charters. Teacher Susan Janis. Congratulations. Nolan Cheek, honorable mention from Heart Ransom Academic Charter. Teacher Susan Janis. Congratulations. You can come up here, all the way up here. There we go. Pooja Dubey, honorable mention, school winner, Lakewood Elementary. Carrie Ann Burrows, teacher. Congratulations. Joanna Hoffman, third place from Heart Ransom Academic Charter. Susan Janis, teacher. Bailey Sistifer, second place, Heart Ransom Academic Charter. Teacher Susan Janis. Congratulations. Okay. Heidi Bauman, first place school winner from Hart Ransom Academic Charter, teacher Susan Janis. Congratulations to all of our winners tonight.
This is Heidi Bowman.
Fleeing for safety. Pain surged through my body and blood gushed down my side, turning the ground where I collapsed into a bloody puddle. I screamed for help. It seemed like hours, but it was really only minutes before a villager heard my cries and rushed to my aid. He carried me to the home of the local doctor where they managed to stop the bleeding. Healing slowly came. The biggest heartache, however, was not my missing arm. It was the dreadful reality that, for our safety, my family must leave our country. My sister Dim Dim, my mother Dante, and I, Shreya, lived together in our bamboo hut near the southeast border of Myanmar, also known as Burma. We are from the Karen tribe, and our people have long been persecuted by our fellow Burmese. Landmines are scattered around our war-torn jungle, and one day I had the great misfortune of triggering one. I'm very thankful, though, that only my arm was blown off. My father died from a landmine about a year ago, and some people at church are missing multiple limbs. A loud rap woke me from my sleep. Mother beckoned in the stranger at the door, and they sat down talking in low tones. After several minutes, Mother stood up and asked, "How would you like to go to America?" Dim Dim squealed with delight, but my heart sank. I did not want to go to America. However, I knew it was best for my family's safety. Mother woke us early in the morning to walk the many miles to the refugee camp, which was just across the border in Thailand. We arrived exhausted. The refugee village was repulsive. Trash was littered everywhere, and the stench was sickening. Our house consisted of several tarps draped over some poles. I worried that it would take several months to get all the paperwork, but in 4 weeks our documents were complete. I signed all my papers before we realized Mother and Dim Dim's documents were missing. Mother told me to continue to America without them, assuring me that she and Dim Dim would come when their paperwork arrived. I reluctantly agreed, but 2 weeks later I regretted my decision. As we said a tearful goodbye, I wept bitterly and rested my head on my mother's shoulder, comforted by her warm hug and kisses. I bid Dim Dim goodbye and realized how much my family meant to me. I was weary and overwhelmed when my plane landed in Los Angeles. My caseworker Kennedy was at the airport to meet me, along with an interpreter. She told me that World Relief was working to locate an apartment, but for now I would be staying in a hotel. In my opinion, most anything would be better than the refugee camp. As soon as we scrambled into the car, Kennedy said, "A church group has provided some necessary items to get you started, and a couple people from their group will help you learn basic English." I was so grateful for such kindness. Now, 2 months later, I am desperately searching for a much-needed job. Every job interview has the same answer: no. I feel so disheartened and discouraged. The government has provided limited amount of money to get me started, and those funds are quickly disappearing. Money is a continual worry. In addition, transportation is a big challenge. I have to rely on public transportation since I don't have a license or a vehicle. Language is another ongoing struggle. While I've mastered some beginner words, I still have much to learn. I've discovered Americans have many unusual expressions that have such interesting meanings. Recently, on a rainy trip to the store, I overheard a lady telling her son it was raining cats and dogs. All I saw were raindrops pouring down. On a positive note, I recently discovered a nearby market that sells Burmese food. It is very comforting to have food such as mohinga, my favorite rice noodle, and fish soup. Although my challenges are discouraging at the moment, I am still hopeful for this chance to start a new life in America. I want to make new friends, go to school, and get a job. I also want to help other refugees from Burma. I miss my family dreadfully, and my deepest desire is for Dante and Dim Dim to arrive in America. I am very grateful to have a fresh start in America. It has not been easy, but for the first time in my life, I feel safe. Thank you.
That was amazing. That's like a college essay. Good work. I think, when you hear these finished essays, that reinforces the whole purpose of this Peace Life Essay Contest and some of the thinking behind it and what we're trying to get students to do and to reflect upon. So well done. At this time, I would like to call Division 3, that's grades 7 and 8. Division 3, 7 and 8, and Pamela is there with the packets. And lastly, research the country of origin, the immigration travel process, and the experiences that might occur upon travel.
Jordan Robinson,
test.
finalist from Prescott Senior Elementary, teacher Maya Tobin. Jimena Perez, school winner and finalist from Sacred Heart Elementary in Turlock, teacher Elaine Magny. Alexandra Becerra Ortiz, finalist from Oakdale Junior High School, teacher June Botto. Congratulations. Kate Oliveira, finalist, Sacred Heart Elementary from in Turlock, Elaine Magny, teacher. Skylar Nguyen, school winner and finalist from Prescott Elementary, teacher Maya Tobin. La Loma Junior High School, teacher Juana Roses. Victoria Blanc, honorable mention and school winner from Oakdale Junior High School, teacher Dee Hawksworth. Lauren Bowman, honorable mention, Heart Ransom Academic Charter, teacher Susan Janis. Congratulations. Maura Collins, third place, Heart Ransom Academic Charter, Susan Janis, teacher. Stephen Romano, second place and school winner from Heart Ransom Academic Charter, teacher Susan Janis. Rana Banaka, first place, independent student, teacher Susan Janis. Congratulations to all of our winners.
My name is Amamu Saka. I am 12 years old in a refugee camp running from the guerrillas and in dire need of true refuge. We are about to embark on our journey from Congo to America. If I don't make it, I want people to remember me this way. I am Amamu Saka. I slowly closed the brown leather journal my mother had once treasured. Had we lived a different life, my mother would be here, now, peering over my shoulder with her beautiful, keen hazelnut eyes. My sister would enlighten our spirits in the worst situations with her contagious smile and optimism. My friends would come over to play football in the middle of the deserted dirt field with the sun tickling our skins. But things were different. My mother was slowly choked to death, as if they took pleasure in her suffering. My sister, murdered by the disease that plagued her tiny, frail body. All of my friends were kidnapped and recruited as soldiers, as if they were merely being turned into pawns in a game of chess. But this was no game. This was my life. And now we must leave this war zone we call home in search of a better one. My father is the only one I trust and love. All the others are dead. It seemed impossible to leave the Congo for a life in America, but somehow my father had managed to make it work. We were finally freed from the shackles that bound us to this land. We finally had our visas. When I walked out of that plane, a wave of liberation emanated through my veins. I'm finally free. I thought to myself, I'm free. I strutted my way over to the massive airport. My head was high and my chest was up. I was free. A week later, we were settled into a small apartment in the city of Charlottesville, Virginia. I could wander out and upon this foreign city for days, but I didn't have time for distractions, for it was my first day of school and we were already running late. I quickly tossed my pencil and notebook into my bag and bolted my way over to school. The bell rang just as I stepped foot on campus. I looked around. It was as if I was a crow in a sea of doves. My head hung low as I walked towards the class. I took my seat in the far corner of the room. I could tell that people were already talking about me, but I pretended not to notice. The class soon started with everyone telling each other their names. Wyatt, Emma, Jack, Abigail. The list went on and soon it was my turn. My name is Amamu Shaga, I said softly. I heard the whispers among the class. I just slouched in my seat. I had the strangest name. I had the strangest accent. I had the strangest face. I was the only one whose lip was deformed. Back in the Congo, it wasn't abnormal for one to display such a formation, but things were different here. I prayed not to be called on for the rest of the day, but my prayers weren't answered. I just wanted to specifically introduce our school's newest student, Amamu. He's from the Congo and doesn't know much English, so be sure to give him a warm welcome to our school, Miss Ann said as she turned to write on the whiteboard. I felt something bounce off my neck. At first I thought it was all in my head until it hit me again and again. Every time I turned around I didn't see anything, but someone was throwing something at me. I sat in that class for what felt like hours waiting for break. When the bell finally rang, I swiftly stood up from my chair and walked outside. I stood near the fence by myself. People were giving me looks as if I were an alien. Oh, how I yearned for my mother's affection. I was fortunate enough to meet a young boy named Jack during that break who would have forever changed my life. He stood up for me. He helped me. He was a brother to me. And before I knew it, school had ended and it wasn't so bad after all. I walked home and began my homework. I spent hours on the one page that we had. It was all too confusing. I didn't understand any of it. I spent hour after frustrating hour on it until I was finally finished. When I had completed my homework, I routinely wrote about my day in my journal. I was in the middle of entry number 10 when I heard the front door open. I looked up and saw my father with a grin on his face. "Let's go," he said excitedly. "Go where? When? For what?" I asked. "I'll answer all of your questions later," he said briskly as he opened the door. I cluelessly followed him to the bus stop. We hopped on the bus and rode to a hospital. We entered the waiting room and sat for a few minutes until we were in a strange room with many unknown devices. "This organization saved us from our past life in the Congo, so don't fear. Be brave, my boy," my father whispered in the silence. I slowly scanned the room and everything in it. There were medical tools, gloves, antibiotics. I paused for a moment and tilted my head. The walls, I thought. The walls were covered with pictures of people like me, with the same lip deformation. I stopped. I could hardly breathe. My heart raced. I swallowed heavily, trying to hold back the tears. I finally knew I was here. The surgery went well. When I first looked at myself in the mirror, I was almost unrecognizable. I was overcome with such joy. And that's when it hit me, like a slap on the face. I wanted to help others. I wanted to be a doctor. Journal entry number 10. Living in America has given me a whole new perspective on life. There aren't wars when you step out of your house. The school roofs don't look like they're about to crumble down on you. Everyone is given a fair chance at life. I have come to realize how incredibly lucky I am to be living in such a country, a place I now call home. And even though there might be obstacles in the way, crows can fly over them. I hope the next time I read this journal, I will be helping others like those doctors who helped me. And if I ever forget how grateful I should be living in such a country, I can look back at the memories housed inside of these rough leather covers. I'm Amamu Shaka, and this is my story.
Another excellent story. Very good, Rana. Congratulations. At this time, I'd like to call Division 2, grades 9 and 10. Some of the interesting themes that we take up in the study of English and critical thinking, but I read through so many essays, and some of them were about stories coming from Congo, stories coming from South America, stories coming from the Middle East. I think hearing Rana's story again affirmed for me that what ties all of us here into this dream is these universal ideas of hope, dream, security, love, and you got to hear these themes come through in the stories. So I think sometimes we take these things for granted living here, but part of the dream and coming to school, coming to college is to follow through like the protagonist was given a chance to follow through with her dream in Rana's story. So another testament to the universal values I think that we all hear in these stories that are wonderful.
Brian Estrada, a finalist from Ceres High School, teacher Tracy Pinnell. Congratulations. Okay. Emily Machado, a finalist from Central Catholic High School, teacher Susie Ganaw. Congratulations. Miriam Sabri, finalist from Whitmore Charter School, teacher Virginia Aguilera. Grecia Sanchez, finalist from Ceres High School, teacher Tracy Pinnell. Seth Simmons, finalist from Oakdale Charter High School, teacher Jessica Menifee. Reza Banaka, third place, independent student, teacher Susan Jonas. Emily Suela, second place, Modesto High School, teacher Maggie Monjour. Sierra Vargas, first place, Modesto High School, teacher Maggie Monjour. Let's hear it for our winners.
And the winner, come up and please read your essay.
I am alive. I'm slowly walking down a white road lined with ashes and dust. I look around me and see the crumbling buildings, the walls of rubble and cascading down like waterfalls. There is black smoke waving up in the air as if I was also trying to escape into bright blue skies. The smell of gas and death linger throughout the air. The frightening melody of thundering bombs is bursting from a distance, and the fireworks of bullets raining from the sky. I try to breathe as I gasp for air. I try to run as fast as I can, but I'm not moving. My legs won't move. They're melting into the ground. I start panicking. I start to cry. I open my eyes and awaken. It was just a dream, I tell myself as I take a deep breath of relief. But then I realize it was not a dream or a horrible nightmare. Those are the visions of my last days in Syria that haunt me to this day. My name is Amir Aman Khalid. I was 10 years old when the Syrian Civil War started. I am now 16 and I am alive. My home was bombed and destroyed during the Syrian conflict. While trying to flee, my parents were senselessly killed by the Assad regime. I ended up fleeing to a temporary camp on the outskirts of Aleppo and stayed there for almost 2 years. I had nothing and was full of hunger and thirst for many days and nights, but was relieved that I had escaped the terror that was engulfing the city. I had not escaped the nightmare, but had entered into another nightmare. While at the camp, a man approached me and some other children who had lost their parents. He told us he would take us to Lebanon, where there are families that would take care of us. I was young and naive and felt blessed that I was chosen to get out of the migrant camp to go to a new home. I was taken into a van with other women and children who had also lost everything from the conflict. After driving for hours, we arrived at a rundown building in Malmatan, Lebanon. We were herded like cattle into a tattered building that was adorned with bars on all of the windows. For years, I was beaten and tortured and enslaved by my captors, forced to do the unthinkable. One day, 4 of the women escaped, which led to the raid of my freedom from enslavement. I was taken to Dar al-Amal, the House of Hope, which helps women and children that have been trafficked. While there, they found out that I had family in the United States. They had also contacted the United Nations Refugee Agency to consider me for resettlement. I was one of the fortunate ones to be chosen for resettlement. The International Rescue Committee helped me through the process and guided me through this long, tiring journey. I was sad and scared and torn apart that I would have to leave my homeland of Syria. I did not know what to expect from this land that I would make my new home. Would I be welcomed or looked down upon? While I practiced the culture that I am so proud of, at times I felt that I was being punished for everything that has happened in my life. After years of waiting, I finally arrived in the United States. The IRC brought me to Sacramento, California, where they helped me adjust to my new home. I've had such warm welcomes from the people I have met in Sacramento. The IRC has helped me in so many ways. Once I arrived, I was given clothes, food, medical care, and I started school again. I have also started counseling to help me with the mental pain and nightmares that I cannot control. They have given me the resources to start a new life. It took months before I was fully resettled with my aunt and uncle. I feel blessed I am given this new life. It has been very hard at times not understanding the English language that most people speak. Sometimes I feel down when people stare at me as if I don't belong here. I have nightmares daily of the torture and persecution that I have endured. I get startled when I hear loud noises, and I find it hard to trust in another fully. But I am strong. I am a survivor. I am alive. Wars are not made so we have something to write in the blank pages of our history books. Human trafficking is not a fictional story you watch on Netflix. There are millions of people just like me that are being trafficked every day. The International Labor Organization estimates that there are 20.9 million victims of human trafficking globally. 69% are trapped in forced labor, 26% are children, and 55% are women and girls. Unless we speak out and stop those that are making it a reality, more lives will be destroyed. I feel more than blessed that I am alive. I am determined to graduate from high school and then enroll in a college to get my degree as a social worker. I want to work with organizations that will fight and help the victims of human trafficking. We must embrace, offer a helping hand, and spread the word of peace.
The maturity and the intensity of some of the issues that some of these students have decided on their own to discuss, I think is a testament to their bravery and also to the mission of the Peace Life Center. So things like United Nations, human trafficking, the Assad regime, you could tell that there's a lot of research that went into each and every one of these essays, and that thinking is really creating students and a sense of awareness outside of themselves. So congratulations again to all the writers for taking the opportunity to step outside of yourself and think beyond the horizons. So at this time, I would like to ask the final division, Division 1, that's grades 11 and 12, to get your packets at the back from Pam, and then we'll shortly hear our final essay winner. Distinction between Division 1 and 2 and Division 3 and 4. So here were some of the objectives that the Division 1 and 2 students were focusing on. They were also to imagine what it might be to live in another country and need or want to leave your homeland to come to the United States. They were asked to write a fictional narrative that shares the story of a person from another country coming to the United States today as either an immigrant or a refugee. They were to familiarize themselves with some of the conditions around the world today that might create the desire to immigrate and choose a country of origin of your character. And they were to also research, and we heard that in the last essay, there was a good deal of research into the immigration travel process and the experiences that might occur upon arrival.
Group. Brett Lopez is a finalist from Houston High School, teacher Carolee Ruas. Mihar Nijar, honorable mention from Modesto High School, teacher Glenn Carey. Adam Gunlach, honorable mention, independent student, teacher Susan Janis. Amy Gunlach, second place, independent student Susan Janis. You must be related. William Foote, first place from Turlock High School, teacher Abby Snyder. Congratulations to our participants.
So a while ago, I was rummaging through a box of papers because I'm very organized, and I ran into some interesting papers. So me and my three brothers were adopted from Vietnam, and while I was rummaging through this box of papers, I found some papers involved in the hospital transferring my records to the records of the orphanage, and I think that inspired what I write in this piece. And I'd just like to thank the Peace Life Center for forcing me to analyze what my culture is, and like my history. So without further ado, Konwok Kontat. Like any normal day, the sun peeked over the city and barged its way into my family's small apartment. I'm always the first to be greeted by this unwanted visitor, and as such have created a ritual, comprised mostly of groaning, to meet my nemesis. Today, however, is different. It's the one time a year I jump out of bed, brush my hair without a fuss, and meet the sun with a smile. After all, today is Tet, Vietnamese New Year, a holiday where our worries are drowned out by laughter and song. I am Hong Lei, a 17-year-old resident of Little Saigon in Orange County, and before I was allowed to celebrate Tet as a time of lightheartedness, life was extremely taxing. When I was 14, my family lived in Vietnam. My father, who taught English at the local secondary school, had joined a political group that advocated on behalf of the local Christian indigenous people, called the Montagnards. Such a support of religion and free political thought practically guaranteed him a run-in with the government. I remember my father recalling something a colleague of his had said. It's not the old guerrilla battlefield, South versus North. It's religion versus communism, freedom versus control. My father's job, which he had held for 2 decades, was terminated almost instantly. Rough economic times had been the excuse. Shortly thereafter, a man in a uniform knocked on our door and seized my father. A week later, he returned, battered and bruised. I couldn't bring myself to make eye contact with him for days, but when I did, I saw the same fighting gleam in his eye that I had grown up admiring. Konwok Kontat, he had told me, while there's life, there's hope. In the span of a month, 150 protesters, including my family, escaped to the neighboring Cambodia. In an instant, my friends, home, and life as I had known it vanished. With every step I had taken, my feet ached more, and with every day that food became scarcer, I became hungrier. Each night when my mother's nightmares jolted me awake, screaming, dung bong, don't shoot, I cried myself to sleep. And at that moment, when I was absolutely positive life couldn't get any worse, it did. Cambodia, being an ally of the Vietnamese government, soon began pursuing those of us seeking asylum in their country. The group, which he had traveled with, quickly dispersed out of fear that they would be deported back to the country which they had fled just months earlier. As a final token of kindness, the local fishing community in which we had found shelter offered us a pair of old fishing boats in hopes that somehow we could find our ways to the Philippines, a country that was willing to accept refugees like us. Like sardines in a can, we set off, our destiny held in the unsteady palms of the waves. For 8 days and 9 nights, each that I thought would be my last, we were tossed at sea. Every time the boat lurched, my father would whisper once more, Konwok Kontat. There is not a doubt in my mind that these words were what kept me alive. By some miracle, we made it to the western coast of the Philippines, where we were received by the Philippine Coast Guard. International workers helped my family explore the possible places we could settle permanently, and my parents decided that the United States would be their first choice. After an exorbitant amount of paperwork and countless months of waiting, our refugee status was approved. We were going to America. Life did not immediately get easy when we arrived, however. When we landed, I remember worrying how I'd ever adapt to a world where all Americans look alike and everyone drives on the wrong side of the road. Bigger issues arose when my father had to settle for a job as a security guard because his teaching credentials from Vietnam simply couldn't be transferred to the American education system. The most difficult obstacle to our success, however, turned out to be our background. I remember these 3 graffiti-painted words scrawled on a broken-down house that accosted us when we first drove through Little Saigon. They read, "Asians, go home." Go home to where? The country that had all but banished my family for independent thought? Or its friend Cambodia that valued a political alliance more than our lives? I didn't have a home to go back to. Nevertheless, for every person that wanted us to go home, there were 10 more that made us feel welcome, most memorably the Morgan family. Mr. Harold Morgan, the Caucasian owner of a local chain of donut shops, met my father at a nearby mall where he had been hired. He invited my family to dinner one night, and although I couldn't understand the entire conversation because of my weak English, it was the first time in a long time that I had felt happy. Later tonight, we will celebrate Tet with the Morgans, just like we celebrated Christmas and Thanksgiving with them. Through this relationship, I've come to understand that the Morgans are much more than family friends. They represent America at its finest, the part that sees us as a nation of immigrants whose difference should be championed and not suppressed. As it is true for the Morgans, it is true for me. America is my country, and just like the thousands of refugees and immigrants that come to this country every year, seeking a better life that only America, land of the free and home of the brave, can offer, I am American. I don't know exactly where I have yet to go in life, but for the first time ever, I can say that I live in a country that I trust will get me where I need to be. Because in America, there will always be life, since there will always be freedom, and thus, there will always be hope. Thank you.
Before we leave, I just want to end with a quote. A lot of people are waiting for Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi to come back, but they're gone. We are it. It's up to us. It's up to you. And I think our students today are vehicles of change, and they represented that in their work and in their writing. So the future looks promising and optimistic, I think. So one more hand for these students, please.